Major General Keith L. Ware, in whose name we honor all the soldiers and civilians who participate in the Army's print and broadcast journalism competition. Major General Ware served as Chief of Public Affairs from 1966 through 1967. He was killed in Vietnam in 1968 while commanding the 1st Infantry Division. We want to extend our warmest welcome to Mrs. Joyce Ware of Estes Park, Colorado, widow of Major General Keith L. Ware. We are deeply honored to have you with us today. Staff Sergeant Paul D. Savanach, in whose name we will honor the Military Print Journalist of the Year for 2002. Staff Sergeant Savanach, an Army journalist, was killed in Vietnam in 1969 while serving as a reporter for Pacific Stars and Stripes. We want to also extend our warmest welcome to the mother of Staff Sergeant Paul Savanach, Mrs. Isabel Savanach of Baltimore, Maryland. We are delighted and honored to have you with us, ma'am. Master Sergeant John T. Anderson, in whose name we will honor the Military Broadcast Journalist of 2002. Master Sergeant Anderson was an Army broadcaster captured by enemy forces in Hue, Vietnam in 1968. He was held as prisoner of war for 5 years before his release as part of Operation Homecoming. Master Sergeant Anderson passed in 1988 and is buried in Arlington National Cemetery. We want to extend our warmest welcome to Mrs. Gail Anderson, widow of Master Sergeant John T. Anderson. We are also deeply honored to have you with us today, ma'am. Mr. John Moss and Ms. Peggy Holland, in whose name we will honor the Civilian Print Journalist of the Year for 2002. They were killed in the bombing of the Murrah Federal Building in downtown Oklahoma City on April 19, 1995. Both Moss and Holland were public affairs specialists in the Oklahoma City Recruiting Battalion. This year's winners represent the best of the Army's 1,000 print journalists and 400 broadcast journalists. Here to present the awardees is the Army's Chief of Public Affairs, Major General Larry D. Guittardi.
You know, it is always tough when you follow an Army broadcast journalist. Because as I'm sitting here, I'm listening to the way he, the way he enunciates and the way he pronounces stuff. And as people take great pride in pointing out to me, I'm a native of Western Pennsylvania. Okay, so there are certain, I guess, linguistic track record or footprints that I carry with me. You know, you say greasy, I say greasy. You know, you have a paper bag, I have a paper sack. You have a rubber band, I have a gum band. Now he understands when I say red up the room. Does anybody else know that? Red up the room? Oh my golly, we are representative. Maybe there's more of us than I thought. Anyway, it's a great pleasure to be able to be here today. What I say every year, and I hope nobody gets tired of hearing it, this is a big deal. I mean, this really is. There is no other functional specialty in the Army outside of public affairs that has this level of competition and this type of awards. It's just unheard of. But then I've always felt that the whole trade and practice of journalism, both print and broadcast in the Army, is unique to us and unlike that published in any other service or practiced in any other service. But anyway, it is a big deal to be in the competition, to be selected for Journalist of the Year, be it print or broadcast. It's a big deal if you're selected to be one. And it's a big deal for the rest of your life because you're always going to be a Keith L. Ware Award winner, or you're going to be a Savanach Award winner, or an Anderson Award winner, and it follows you forever. So, I mean, this really is a big deal. What we have here today is, we actually have the best of the best, without a doubt. Not open to any discussion or open to any question. We have a selection process that is as focused and as detailed and as demanding as any you would find in any other type of system with the journalistic awards. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize by name our award winner. So when I call your name, if you would please stand up and face the audience. I'll start off with the Paul D. Savanach Military Print Journalist of the Year, Sergeant First Class Vanessa Minette. Hall, and Civilian Print Journalist of the Year, Mr. Wayne Hall. the John T. Anderson Military Broadcast Journalist of the Year, Sergeant Eric Shadowin. The Broadcast Journalist of the Year, Mr. Kane Richard Faribaugh. The Outstanding New Writer, Specialist Chuck Wagner. And the Outstanding New Broadcaster, Specialist Preston Harrington. It's a great pleasure for me to be able to recognize and greet on behalf of us all the host of this year's ceremony. And that's the Acting Chief of Staff of the Army, General Jack Kane, who is probably the greatest friend that Army Public Affairs and Army print and broadcast journalists has ever had. This is a guy who knows what you do because he's commanded at every level in the Army. He's been a strong supporter of everything we do at every level in the Army. And he is probably our most demanding critic and our greatest supporter. So it's a great pleasure for me to be able to introduce the Acting Chief of Staff of the United States Army, General Jack Kane.
Please rise.
You're welcome.
Please be seated.
You can sit down.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the nation's capital. We're absolutely delighted to have you here. Is this thing on? Okay, that's a little better. Got to turn the volume up. I appreciate those kind remarks, General Petardi, and great to see so many of the Army family here, our friends and our co-workers, and our honored guests. A special welcome to Mrs. Joyce Ware, the widow of Major General Keith Ware, Mrs. Isabel Savannah, mother of Staff Sergeant Paul Savannah, and Mrs. Gail Anderson, the widow of Master Sergeant John T. Anderson. And we're really delighted all of you could join us here today. We had a harrowing winter here. It snowed most of the time, and we've never had a spring, because it's rained most of the time. And I don't know what it's doing in your neck of the woods, but in ours it's been pretty challenging. So what we're doing here today is we're making our own sunshine. That's the deal. Life in the Pentagon is as busy as you can imagine. It always has been, but it certainly has been very, very busy since 9/11. And how many people, this is your first time to the Pentagon? Good, okay. Well, hopefully you'll be able to get an opportunity to tour this building. It's a magnificent facility. It holds the headquarters of the greatest military in the world, the greatest military that's ever been established. And we're pretty proud of the fact it's home to the best Army in the world as well. And it's 23,000 people normally work here. And so it was the largest office building in the world for many, many years. Built very quickly during World War II. And despite the horror of what took place here on 9/11, it survived very well. And we've been back in business completely 1 year after. And what was absolutely remarkable, despite the fact that we lost 175 people here, people much like yourselves. They were young and old, they were men and women, they were soldiers and civilians. We decorated 77 of them for heroism in rescuing people here. Pretty dramatic. But despite the fact we had lost 175 people in one day, and we had an airplane in this building, and those bodies were still in this building, this entire workforce came back to work the next day. Despite the horror that they felt, despite the sense of loss, and despite their fear, which was understandable. Why? Because they came out of a sense of duty. They knew the nation was at war, and they knew they had a place of duty to respond to, and they came. I've been in the business here 37 years in the Army, not here in the Pentagon, but 37 years. I will never, ever forget that moment. This is predominantly a civilian workforce here, and they were here shoulder to shoulder, trying to do what they could for the nation. So we're very, very proud of the people that work in this building. And we're here to honor something very special, because we're here to recognize excellence, and that's why I'm here. I'm proud to be associated with this, to recognize this kind of excellence, because it's hard. Achieving excellence is very hard. Most people in life don't achieve it because it's just too hard. Excellence takes a willingness to overcome the fear of failing, the commitment to set and enforce high standards. It takes a moral courage. and at times it takes a dogged determination to succeed. So the men and women that we're going to recognize here today have demonstrated this commitment and determination. And I appreciate the opportunity to personally offer my congratulations to each and every one of them. You as Army journalists are the link to the American people. The conduit to the American people is journalism, both in the Army and in the public sector and private sector. It's key to our success. We work for the American people. They are who we answer to. This is a democracy and the best democracy in the world. We answer to you, the American people. And you have a right to know who we are, what we think, and what we are doing. And the only way the American people know that is through journalists. Because it's very difficult for us to gain airtime for people to listen to us, or to gain print space for people to listen to us. The only way that can happen is journalists have to go out there and find the story and then communicate it. And in this case, our journalists also communicate to this great Army family of ours, which is very, very important. So telling the Army story is important to us. We are in 120 countries today as we speak. We have 370,000 soldiers, both active guard and reserve, deployed in those 120 countries. We have never been busier since World War II. In the last 22 months, we have fought 2 wars, both of them very different. One in Afghanistan, in the mountains, in the snow-covered mountains in the wintertime, against the Taliban and against a tough enemy, the Al-Qaeda. And we are still fighting there today. Not on the scale we were last year at this time, but nonetheless, we are still fighting. And we're helping to stabilize that country. And you all saw what we did in Iraqi freedom, a marvelous campaign. And we have defeated a rogue state, and now we have to stabilize that country, and we will do that. We're challenged by that, to be sure, but we will do it. And our equipment receives a lot of attention: helicopters, tanks, Bradley fighter vehicles. We've got tremendous equipment. The American industry provides us, the American taxpayer pays for it. But the real strength of our Army is our people. It's all about the quality of our people. War for the United States Army is a personal, up-close experience. It's usually brutal, and it's always terrifying. And the human dimension of that war puts a print on a human being that will be there forever. Our soldiers have seen what is happening to their teammates in the horror of war, as bullets and rounds explode and what it does to their bodies. And those images they'll never forget. Our soldiers have seen the results of war in terms of what it does to innocent people on the battlefield, women and children. And they've seen those sights, and they've cared for those people. And some of them have died right in front of them. And they've seen the horror of what the Iraqi military did to use women and children as human shields. And our soldiers took rounds, got shot, in other words, because they didn't want to fire back at those women and children. Soldiers were going down, and they refused to fire back. Just remarkable. They'll never ever be the same because of participating in battle. The human dimension of war is a sobering experience, and it changes you for life. In my own view, they will be much better people for it because they will appreciate the value of life. And our soldiers have tremendous compassion. They are superbly led, well-trained, and they're full of compassion. There are people like Sergeant Andy Black in Afghanistan, who was assaulted in at 8,000 feet into the mountains. And when he landed there with 59 other soldiers and a battalion commander to set up the battalion command post, much to their surprise at night, they were immediately brought under fire by 350 Al-Qaeda. And we only had 60 people. In the first few minutes, about 30 of the soldiers went down, they were wounded. And for the next 12 hours, 30 soldiers fought against the 350. And I met Andy Black in the hospital here at Walter Reed. He got shot. And he said, I asked him, would it have been possible just to move off the bridge and get out of enemy fire? And he said, sir, I thought about that coming home on the aircraft, the hospital aircraft. He said, yeah, we could have done that. He said, but the Al-Qaeda was right in front of us. We could see them. They were actually taunting us And he said, we came here to kill those people who would kill Americans. These are his words, not mine. And they were right in front of us, and we were trained to do this. He said, so we knew it would be either they or us. And you know what he means by that. So we went about business, is the word he used. And what he meant is they got behind the rocks and they began to fight, and fight back against those odds. What's pretty remarkable about that is the battalion commander, who's 37 years of age, married, 2 children, took the remaining 30 soldiers and attacked up into the rocks, physically leading that attack himself. And he did it twice. And they killed 60 of the Al-Qaeda. And miraculously, we did not lose a single soldier that day. How blessed we were. The compassion of the soldier. We do not hate that enemy. You could make an argument that we could hate that enemy, given what they have done to us, 3,000 dead. But our soldiers don't hate. They don't carry any hate with them whatsoever. They carry determination with them. And after the fighting was over, we picked up the wounded, our 30 wounded, and put them in our helicopters, which came to retrieve us. And then our soldiers, without an order being given, picked up the Al-Qaeda wounded and brought them back in the same helicopters and took them back to the same surgical suites. Why? Why would we do something like that? Because we're Americans. Our soldiers reflect the values of the American people. We have no interest of taking unnecessary lives on a battlefield, even of our enemies. After all, the only reason why we are using these instruments of war is to compel their will, to change their behavior, to force them to do something that they would not do with words. And we have to use bullets to do it. And once that is over, then we stop. That's who we are. We're compassionate people. Therefore, our soldiers are. But never, ever mistake the American soldiers' compassion for weakness. Because our soldiers are determined, and they're very tough, and they're highly skilled. Another soldier in Iraq, his name is Sergeant Ryan. He's married, has a 2-year-old daughter. And what happened is they took some artillery rounds and some of their protective masks, these are gas masks, protect against chemical attack, were destroyed. So they didn't have enough protective masks to go around. And then they had another attack, and they thought that the attack had chemicals in it. And this young soldier who's single, who has a mask, gives his mask to another soldier who's married and has 2 kids. Now, understand what's happening here. They believe this is a chemical attack. And they believe that somebody's going to die here. This soldier hands his mask to the married soldier and says, "What are you doing?" He said, "You're married, you have 2 kids. You need to go home." He hands him the mask. What is that youngster doing? He's willing to give up his life right there. Who's he giving it up for? His teammate. I've been around this business for 37 years, and I have been in awe of what I just described to you every single year it happens. And it's a remarkable thing because our soldiers are willing to demonstrate an absolute willingness on their part to risk everything that they care about in life. Everything. The opportunity to have a full life, the opportunity to be a parent like many of us have been. They're willing to risk the opportunity to have friends. And they're willing to risk the opportunity to have love in their life, to love and to be loved. They want to risk all of that. What do they risk it for? They risk it for one another and for a simple sense of duty. And this is true honor. And we can never, ever take it for granted. And I know we never will. We can never take that kind of devotion for granted. Most of us will never face such difficult, dangerous situations that I've described that put you to that kind of a test. But that doesn't concern me because the soldiers here who are wearing this uniform have taken an oath to their nation. And they live the values of the United States Army every day. And they are submitting to something larger than themselves. And they are reflecting every day the same values that are so dramatically being carried out by some of the soldiers I've mentioned to you today. There's no difference. There is no difference. So we're very, very proud here to honor soldiers who have distinguished themselves, who have submitted to something larger than themselves, who also have demonstrated moral courage to succeed, who are also dedicated, and who are also committed to excellence. So I congratulate each and every one of you. And I'm just absolutely delighted here to be able to give you an award and shake your hand and wish you Godspeed. And I think what we'll do now is present the awards. Thank you.
The 2002 Paul D. Savinoff Award is presented to Sergeant First Class Canessa Minette. Sergeant Minette served as the non-commissioned officer in charge of the 17th Public Affairs Detachment at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii. Sergeant Minette will begin working at the Edelman Public Relations firm in New York City under the Army Public Affairs Training with Industry program this August. An example of her writing has been made available for your reading. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant First Class Canessa Minette. The 2002 Moss Holland Civilian Print Journalist of the Year Award is presented to Mr. Wayne Hall. During the competition year, he served as the editor of the Fort Belvoir Eagle. Mr. Hall now works as the Public Affairs Officer for the Army's Family Liaison Office at the Pentagon. An example of his writing has been made available for your reading. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Wayne Hall. The John T. Anderson Military Broadcast Journalist of the Year Award is presented to Sergeant Eric Shadowins. Sergeant Shadowins works as a broadcaster for American in Vicenza, Italy. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant Eric Shadowins. The Civilian Broadcast Journalist of the Year Award is presented to Mr. Kane Richard Fairbaugh. Mr. Fairbaugh works as broadcast reporter and anchorman for American Forces Network Europe in Frankfurt, Germany. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kane Richard Fairbaugh. The Rising Star for the Outstanding New Writer Award is presented to Specialist Chuck Wagner. Specialist Wagner is assigned to the Fort Myer Public Affairs Office and reports for the Post newspaper, The Pentagram. He is currently serving a 6-month deployment in support of Task Force Bravo at Soto Cano Air Base in Honduras as the editor of the Iguana. An example of his writing has been made available for your reading. Ladies and gentlemen, Specialist Chuck Wagner. The Rising Star for the Outstanding New Broadcaster Award is presented to Specialist Creston Harrington. Specialist Harrington was assigned to the 2nd Infantry Division, serving at American Forces Network Weejambu in Korea during the competition year. He just completed a change of station to AFN Hessen in Germany. Ladies and gentlemen, Specialist Creston Harrington.
Travel safely.
Please rise. Please continue standing for the presentation of the awards. The Army Commendation Medal is presented to Sergeant First Class Canessa Minette for becoming the Army's Military Print Journalist of the Year.
Okay, where do we start?
The Commander's Award for Civilian Service is presented to Mr. Wayne Hall for becoming the Army's Civilian Print Journalist of the Year. The Meritorious Service Medal is presented to Sergeant Eric Shadowins for becoming the Army's as well as the Department of Defense's Broadcast Journalist of the Year. The Commander's Award for Civilian Service is presented to Mr. Kane Richard Fairbaugh for becoming the Army's Civilian Broadcast Journalist of the Year. The Army Commendation Medal is presented to Specialist Chuck Wagner for being selected as the Army's and Department of Defense's outstanding new writer. The Army Achievement Medal is presented to Specialist Creston Harrington for becoming the Army's outstanding new broadcaster.
Please be seated. Now is the opportunity that each of our awardees, we speak now, right? Okay, just a moment. In any case, I'm getting ahead of myself. But what we do is we structure it so, journalists, particularly broadcast journalists, like to talk. And they like to talk at great length. So what we do is we arrange it, it comes near the end, and we've got the buffet waiting. And we find that always modulates the length of their talk. But again, let me repeat one thing. This is a big deal. If you look at who we've gotten to careers with, I mean, this is an extraordinary accomplishment. And if you look at the number of people we send on to the DoD level Journalist of the Year broadcast, this is a very good.
At this time, Mr. Willard Hackerman will represent Mrs. Savinuk in recognizing Sergeant First Class Minette in memory of her late son, Paul. This is the 27th year that the Savinuk family has presented this award.
When I grow up, I want to be able to speak as General Keane did. I've done this for several years. Today is a little different. This morning, I will say a few words about the soldier for whom this Journalist of the Year award is named, Paul David Savinuk. At the outbreak of the Vietnam War, Savinuk was stationed in Germany, and he could have stayed in Germany out of harm's way. Instead, he wrote senators and congressmen begging to be transferred to Vietnam. Finally, a congressman arranged it. Paul David Savinuk is the only military journalist killed in the Vietnamese War. I'll repeat that. The only military journalist killed in the Vietnamese War. He gave his life trying to save another soldier. He was awarded the Bronze Star. I would think that he should be considered for the Congressional Medal of Honor. I will urge my senators and congressmen to act on this. If anyone present would like to help in this effort, please contact me after the ceremony. To the sergeant who won the award, I'd like to present this to you, Sergeant.
At this time, Mrs. Anderson will recognize Sergeant Eric Shadowins in memory of her husband, the late Master Sergeant John T. Anderson. Each year, a number of professional organizations and associations recognize our military and civilian journalists of the year with special presentations. The first is Mr. John Grady from the Association of the U.S. Army.
It's a pleasure always to come to this ceremony. My late wife was a Keith L. Ware Award winner several times over, and twice TJ, Thomas Jefferson Award winner. We have plaques and places of honor in our house. And my 24-year-old daughter now wants to take one of these with her when she finally moves out. And I said, well, that's okay. Anyway, so it's a great honor for the Association of the United States Army to present these awards. Now, we present watches. This isn't because we think that they don't know what deadline questions are. It's just a token of appreciation, so don't read anything else into it. They do, all journalists in the Army do a tremendous job. I want to say that AUSA wanted to recognize them beyond the presentation of these watches. So we created a place on our website called Dispatches from the Front. And what this is reports from all over the Army. And we're just putting these up there as a continuing story of what the Army is doing in those 120 countries. And we think that this is just one way of recognizing them. And I'd like to give them, we won't pass out the watches, they can go get those afterwards, but let's all give these wonderful journalists a round of applause.
From the Army Times is Mr. Alex Neal IV.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here. As managing editor of Army Times, which is a news weekly and an independent news weekly, part of the Gannett chain known as USA Today and so forth. I read the work that the Army reporters do every day. I go online and I read this, much to the chagrin of the staff, because the very common dynamic is I will print something out, I'll walk over to them with it and say, why didn't we have this? These guys are really good. They, as General Guattardi said, this is a big deal because the quality of reporting that's being done by the Army journalists is really top-notch, and it speaks well to the entire public affairs organization, because behind that there's a lot of good leadership in editing, so forth. So to win this award, they had to beat a lot of really good people. So I'm very proud to present these awards to the print journalists, to Sergeant First Class Knessa Minette as the Military Print Journalist of the Year, and to Specialist Chuck Wagner as the Rising Star. Thank you for having me today.
From the Federal Times is Mr. Bernard Adelsberger.
Good morning. It's a pleasure for me to be here representing Federal Times. As General Keane said, in times of challenges, it's very important for an organization to tell its story and to tell the story of its people meeting those challenges. And it's a pleasure for me to congratulate Wayne Hall for being named the best at performing that critical mission. Thank you.
Ms. Ria Mattel of Avid Corporation Technology unfortunately could not be here today. Gifts from Avid will be mailed to the broadcast awardees. Representing the Non-Commissioned Officers Association is Air Force retired Chief Master Sergeant Richard Schneider.
Aren't they magnificent? Aren't they really magnificent? You know, the general earlier made many great comments, but the comment that sticks in my mind is these award winners, these enlisted people, these civilians, represent the very best in the military today and within their competitions. But you know, they're not here by accident. And our association would like to recognize the leadership that brought you here, the leadership of your community, the leadership that had you trained and looked out for trainers and looked out for people to give you the opportunities, and the leaders that were your non-commissioned officers and your officers in charge that said, go do it. You're qualified, go do it. And we are so proud to be here today to represent you who did it, and to recognize the leadership that gave you the opportunity to celebrate today. We are delighted to be here. You know, I looked at the biography of General Ware, and I was absolutely impressed with the biography. And one of the statements, one of the very first statements in that biography is minimized because it only says he entered the United States Army as a result of the selective service system. Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to tell you what that statement means to me. It means he was an enlisted man, and I am so damn proud of him for starting a military career as an enlisted person. And for all of you in this room today receiving awards, you enlisted people, your start is every bit as wonderful to a career. Your opportunities lie in front of you, the opportunities to grow in rank, to grow in stature, to grow in position, and yes, to even become an officer in the United States Army, as did General Ware. We as an association are here today to recognize you and to celebrate your triumph. We have some citations for the enlisted people, and I'd like to give them out right now. And I'd just like to say thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Eric. Congratulations. Congratulations. 2 rising stars. My God. You know, right there on the thing, it says rising stars. And you know, that star has got a long way to go before it gets to the pinnacle of this world. And to all of you, we encourage you to keep rising, doing up. You're great. Thank you.
Kodak representative Ms. Karen Sweet, who also could not be here today, has furnished 35mm color film to all the awardees, which will be given to them later today. At this time, we will hear from our Journalists of the Year. Here is the Military Print Journalist of the Year, Sergeant First Class Canessa Minette.
Good morning. General Guittardi, General Gaylord, Sergeant Major Prater, friends, family, and honored guests. My first taste of journalism success came in the 3rd grade when a book that I wrote for the Young Authors Conference took first place. Up to that point, I'd always loved to write poems, stories, song lyrics, but something about knowing that my words put to paper gave others enjoyment, solidified my love of writing. For me, it's about knowing that if I choose the wrong word or don't properly transition from one point to the next between just the right sentence, that the meaning of the story can change or possibly be lost altogether. That's how I approach all of my public writing. Since the day I became an Army journalist, I've approached each story the same way. Being awarded this honor today is a very humbling experience, and I know that without the great men and women I wrote about last year who served in Bosnia, that today would not be possible. Without the soldiers who do their jobs each and every day for the Army and their country, in so many different capacities, my job wouldn't be nearly as wonderful. It's in that spirit that I'd like to thank all the soldiers who do their jobs so well, making mine so much more rewarding. I'd also like to thank my mom, Jackie, and my sister Christy for being here with me today. This is a terrific moment, and I'm grateful to share it with all of you. Thank you.
Now the Civilian Print Journalist of the Year, Mr. Wayne Hall.
General Guittardi, distinguished guests, honored colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to acknowledge the members of my family here this morning. To my wife, Lauren, thank you. Without your love and support, this never would have been possible. To my parents, thank you for instilling in me the drive to succeed. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the members of my extended family for attending. I'm truly honored to accept this award. I was ecstatic in March when I got the news, and in the months since I've often found myself pondering the question, how did I get here? I don't mean that in the spiritual sense, which guides us to church on Sundays, but in the professional sense. How did a young man from the small town of Montgomery, Pennsylvania, become the Army Civilian Journalist of the Year? That's a question I'm sure my journalism instructor, Sergeant First Class Dan Hassett, has been asking himself as well. Especially after he told me on the first day of the course that I would not graduate. I guess June 20th, 1989, the day of my DINPOS graduation, was just the first time that I would prove him wrong, overcome the challenge, and achieve. My experiences at DINPOS put me down the path to becoming the best journalist I could be. And the 4 years prior, which I spent as an airborne infantryman, would prove invaluable throughout my career. I left DINPOS armed with the most powerful weapons an Army journalist can carry: the ability to think, the desire to tell the Army story, and a pen, which through the years I've come to realize really is mightier than the sword. It took me some time to figure out just what that meant. My job is to tell the Army story. At first I thought it meant telling soldiers about the Army. But over time I realized that it really meant telling the stories of soldiers, and telling those stories to everyone you can. And through the past 15 years, I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to share some remarkable soldiers' stories. And in the process, I've learned a lot about the soldiers who make up our Army. They are mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters. They are coaches and teachers. They are friends and confidants. They are invincible, and yet they are vulnerable. They are very strong, but fragile. They are heroes, and most of all, they are human. The stories of those exceptional individuals have driven me to do the absolute best job possible in telling their stories. They are the inspiration for my work, and I owe a great deal of my success to all the soldiers who have entrusted me to tell their story. Thank you.
And now the Military Broadcast Journalist of the Year, Sergeant Eric Shadelis.
Before I came here today, I decided not to write a speech. For the simple fact I wanted to live in the moment, and I wanted to reflect on what was happening here and now. But we'll begin now. General Guattardi, General Gaylord, Sergeant Major Prater, thanks for being here. Friends, family members, Mrs. Ware, Mrs. Anderson, Mrs. Savinok, it's an honor. There's a common story among military journalists, and it seems to be, how did I get here? Was I qualified to do what the Army chose for me to do? And time and time again I see that what happens is you join the military, they say, hey, this is what you're going to be good at, and you're good at it. But it's that little bit of creativity and that extra oomph that you give it that I guess gets you here. And honestly, I think a lot of that is there in everyone, but the NCOs, the officers, the peers, other soldiers, and the civilian folks that I've worked with have helped bring that out of me. And some of which are here today, Sergeant Howard, Sergeant Velasquez, a few others. But I just wanted to also say that, once again, this has been said a million times, and I believe we all truly believe this. We do what we do for one reason, and it's to tell the Army story, and to tell the Army family story. And it's remarkable what soldiers and airmen and sailors and Marines do on a daily basis. And I'm just honored to be their voice. I want to thank my wife for being here. She's my light. Thank you.
The Civilian Broadcast Journalist of the Year, Mr. Kane Fairbaugh.
Well, in the past 6 years, I've been to 6 of the world's trouble spots, and people ask me, are you scared? Well, not as scared as I am if I run over my time limit for this speech right now. And General Guattardi, I will refrain from using such words as red up in downtown. First and foremost, the word of thanks goes out to more than 2 million men and women in uniform that give us up here a reason to be out there and tell a story. General Dwight Eisenhower once said, the reason for establishing the organization I work for, the American Forces Network Europe, was a good soldier is an informed soldier. Well, I'd like to think that we're doing an excellent job keeping them informed, and these awards prove it. As with many things we do in this business, even though this award is a personal distinction and an absolute honor for me, it's an award that's the result of a team effort. Some of the team members of that team who deserve special thanks are Ann Mulligan, Gary Bottell, Milt Fitzwater, and Lieutenant Colonel Michael Edrington. Many times I approach them with crazy ideas like, hey, let's use a video phone in Afghanistan. And instead of them saying no, they say yes each and every time, and that's what makes me successful. Staff Sergeant Dan Milbauer, who accompanied me from the streets of Kabul, Afghanistan to the deserts of Kuwait, deserves special recognition. Our successful efforts were due in large part to his soldiering skills and his dedication to the craft of broadcasting. He's a good friend in a tough spot, and I'm eternally grateful for his help. There's someone in the audience today I'd like to thank, longtime AFN veteran Herb Glover, who retired after 43 years of service to AFN this year. Herb's a mentor to me and was the brightest guiding light this past year at AFN, and my success in receiving this award is due to his commitment to letting me excel by showing me the way. This award is special for several reasons to me, but the most important being my family, who is in the audience today, and it's the first time I've been able to share an honor such as this with them, and it means a lot. Mom, Dad, Ashley, and Olga, thanks for being here. And in closing, I would like to say that this award for me, and I hope for all of us, is certainly not the pinnacle or end of our career, but just the beginning. With more than 100,000 troops in Iraq, more than 5,000 in Afghanistan, and hundreds of thousands more in harm's way, there are definitely plenty more stories to tell, and I can't wait to help tell them. Thank you.
The Outstanding New Writer of the Year, Specialist Chuck Wagner.
Good morning, General Guittardi, guests. It's a great feeling when readers notice the passion and the intensity that I put into my work. I tell anyone who will listen that I have the best job in the military. I'm currently deployed to Sotocana Air Base in Honduras, where I thrive on the adrenaline of the assignment. I feel like a military reporter embedded with the best humanitarian mission in the world. It also feels good to say that at my home unit newspaper, the Pentagram, I'm with the best publication in the Army. I'm convinced it will soon be the best newspaper in the Defense Department. I'm honored that the Army has placed enough importance on the job we do as journalists to hold an event like this, flying me all the way from a dusty, bug-infested valley in Comayagua, Honduras. I'm also very happy that my mother could be here, something I assumed probably wasn't going to happen. I've heard since I got here that several members of the staff, especially Sergeant Jennifer Stutzman, hustled behind the scenes on my behalf. I thank her and anyone else who has watched my back while I was deployed. As a writer, I'm grateful to work with an editor like Bo Whittington. He never calls off the dogs, he never ignores the reporter's instinct, and he puts trust where it's deserved. Most of all, you've got to thank the great characters who make up the United States Army. It's the most diverse mix of people you'll find anywhere, and they do a job that lists things like honor and respect in the job description. This country and its military is all about character, and a good story needs good characters, and that's why I have the best job in the military.
And finally, the Outstanding New Broadcaster of the Year, Specialist Creston Harrington.
General Guittardi, other distinguished guests, my father, mother, grandmother, and wife April, thank you for being here today. My father encouraged me and convinced me joining the military would finalize the foundation of manhood in my life, and you're right, Dad. Thank you. Being awarded Rising Star, senses of honor, pride, and pressure all overwhelm me at once. I'm honored to be here today, be recognized and acknowledged for all of the hard work I put into my job. But I'm more proud of serving my country as a soldier in the United States Army, performing my military mission to the best of my personal ability. But the pressure comes from questions like, where do I go from here? How do I ever type this? Well, I realize that without struggle, there is no progress. And no one is perfect, but you can die trying to be, and I plan to. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more
more round of applause for all of our awardees. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Major General Guitar.
Okay, closing remarks, couple things. One is we've got the buffet set up where? Room number? GMS says 3C668. Closing remarks are just that. Thank you for coming. Appreciate the hard work everybody put in to make it a success. And for the awardees, what a great accomplishment. Don't rest on your laurels. Keep pushing hard. See you all next year for the next big deal.
Ladies and gentlemen, this does conclude the ceremony. Once again, we'd like to invite everyone to join us for the reception in the General Officer's Mess, located in room